We might be a minute early. I'm sure some more people will be joining us, but I'm super excited today. Hi, Patty.
Good morning.
We're so excited to have you. I'm going to keep my comments brief so that Patty can get started. We talked yesterday, and I told her how excited I was to have her this morning. The timing of her coming in and your book is spot on. So, Patti Seda, she owns Patti Seda Consulting. She's an executive consultant, talent. And Patty, I'm just going to turn it over to you. I know you mentioned you wanted us to be interactive, so please, everybody, feel free to unmute at any time and chime in.
Yes, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Now, as soon as I get my computer set up, then all of you seem to disappear. So bear with me for just a moment. Technology is so amazing when it works. I just love it. Let's see, how do I? Oh, here we go. Is this the ticket? Let's see. No, I keep losing you all. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Click on that. Oh, found you. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Thanks for having me, and thanks to all of you for joining this morning. Really exciting. Michelle mentioned that it was a great time to write a book. However, it is an interesting time to write a book that's about discovering job joy when so many of us are struggling with our job and trying to figure out what does this look like, and some of us even losing our jobs and figuring out, okay, what's my next step. So thank you for having me, and the principles that I listed in this book really apply to so many other aspects of your life. So what we're going to do is just kind of do an overview of why I wrote this book and some of the principles that are in it, and then open it up for questions when we're all done. But what I'd first like to start with is making this interactive, because I get really tired of listening to myself talk all the time, and you will too. So let me know in the chat. So you should, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little chat box. If you can go ahead and click on that, let me know your name and where you're from and where you are. Like, where are you? Are you on your deck? Are you in your home office? Just tell me a little bit about where you are. One of the things I'm also doing a lot of speaking about is making that transition from home office to home. And quite often when it's all intertwined, it gets really difficult to separate it out. So my top 3 tips on making that transition from home office to home is to have a designated space. Make sure that even if it's not an office, that you have like your own space that you can say, this is my work. And even for kids, it's really nice when they can have their own space that says, this is my school area. And then try to get to some routines. We're going to be talking about how important routines are in all of this. And then also, what does the end of the day look like? The end of the day, walking away from that home office. And if your home office is in the middle of your living space, try to get some separation from it. Take it off the dining room table, take it off the living room table, shut the laptop from the couch and put it away. Even throw a blanket or a sheet or something over it, so you mentally have that distance between home office and your home. So let's see who we all have here. Oh goodness. Oh, we have so many people. I love this. Thank you. Robert, you're in your home office, and I was City, Dustin, and Marion at my home office. The kids are still sleeping. Okay. I'm sorry, probably not going to talk quiet. Lindsay, you're in your home office. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Ann King, oh, love to see you. You're in your kitchen. Thank you. Can you bring me a cup of coffee? I didn't quite fill mine up this morning. Holly is coming. You're in your basement, I'm assuming, in your workspace. Sherry, you're in Marion. Favorite place in the kitchen. Sonia, Swisher. Hey, Swisher, I'm Shoeyville. Good to see you right across the interstate. Jim, Cedar Rapids, home office. Michelle, home office in your cozy chair. Oh, this is great. We're not going to ask, do you have like regular pants on, or do you still have your yoga pants or your pajama pants? There's no judgment. Oh my gosh, there's no judgment in any of this. Oh, Alan from Marion, Laura, in my business in Marion and in my home office in rural Lynn County, Nick and Marion at my office alone. Thank you for putting that in there. Heather in your office. Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for chiming in. It just feels like we're all really together, even though we're miles and miles apart. So can you see? Let's see. I can't. Have I shared my screen? Here we go. All right. And there, I lost you all again.
We can see it well, though.
Oh, good. Good. Very good. Let me, meeting controls. Do you feel like everybody has a little more patience that maybe things aren't quite perfect? I'm hoping you all say yes. Great. Okay, here we go. So the topic today is all about, let's see, now my chat is showing up somewhere different. Emily or Michelle, can you let me know if there are chats coming in? Because for some reason I've lost it on my screen and I'm not sure how to bring it back up again.
Yep, we'll keep an eye on it, Patty.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So the topic today is guiding yourself and others through challenging times. And oh goodness, are these challenging times, right? My name is Patti Seda. I've owned my own consulting business for about 5 years. Before that, I spent 25 years in various HR roles, mostly the head of HR for Hibu, formerly known as Yellow Book, formerly known as McLeod USA, formerly known as Telecom USA, formerly known as Teleconnect. Talk about challenging times. We went through a lot of transitions from growing our company from about 250 employees up to about 8,000 globally. So I was a head of HR for the US operations. And then I was also the HR business partner for the global chief operating officer. So just getting to know people from all over the world and understanding that even though we all have different backgrounds and we all have different, just different ways of doing things and even different ways of living, we're all people and we all need to have people around us, and we all need to, we all have different needs and what drives and motivates us. So when I started my consulting business, my real goal was to help people find their center and how to be their professional and personal best. So I'm certified in NPO personality assessments, as well as emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is very important right now, learning to control yourself and regulate your emotions. And then also author of Discovering Job Joy. So enough about me, let's dig into the content. So we already did this, introduce yourself via chat. I'd also like to have you list in the chat, what is something that has been just kind of a positive thing or a pleasant surprise that's happened in all of this? If you could put that in the chat, that would be great. And I'm still going to try really hard to see if I can see chats here. Michelle, Michelle or Emily, can you shout out some of the different positive things that are coming out that are showing up on the chat?
Yep, Sonia says community support of small business. Nick said many more meals together as a family. And that's what I was in the process of typing too. Sherry said my teenage daughter's loving school at home. The abundance mindset of others, focusing on skill developments, just change of a busy lifestyle, more family time at home.
Right. I was talking to somebody the other day who has a nonstop schedule, nonstop, owns her own business, on lots of different boards and committees. And she kind of leaned into the computer the other day and said, I'm actually really enjoying being at home. I'm actually really enjoying getting to know my kids, maybe better than they want me to know them. But just there are so many positive things that are coming out of this. And I do ask that every morning you think about those positive things, because when we fill our head with the positives and we fill our head with what's good and that attitude of gratitude, our whole day is going to be so much better. So that's really step number one. And how do you guide yourself and others through this positive change? Just please don't turn on the news or pick up your phone the first thing when you wake up. The first thing when you wake up, please think about those things you're really grateful for. and the positive things in your life. And even if you start every interaction with others with that positive focus, you'll be amazed how much better that interaction is. I mean, just imagine when your kid comes down the steps and the first thing is you say is, really, you're wearing those pajamas again? Or have you brushed your teeth? Can you please just comb your hair? You're putting that person on such a defense. And what if you said when they first came down the steps, good morning, I am so glad to be spending this time with you. First of all, you should record it because you'll probably get such a reaction that you might be able to make some money off of that reaction. But just imagine what a different mindset you'll both have going into that day. It's not as defensive, it's more open, and you're willing to operate from that position of abundance versus that position of scarcity. So that's really step number one as you're going through this. Think about how do you have that positive thought and that attitude of gratitude in the morning and every interaction that you have. Second of all, because we need to get this out in the open, what are some of the current challenges? I mean, there are obvious ones here, but for you personally, what is the current challenge that is making this the most difficult? And again, I'm going to need some help just because I can't see this.
Lindsay said no hugs.
My dog is getting so much attention. We're done with our walk and he beelines to his kennel and goes all the way in the back, like, don't touch me anymore. What else?
Dan said constant worry about my disabled sister in a group home. Can't visit. Apprehension of business to invest given economic climate. Jim said the personal interaction with workmates and missing one-on-one interactions.
Right. Yeah, those are some real challenges that are out there. And so thank you for sharing that. I know it can be hard in a group setting, especially where you don't know everybody. But I do think that vulnerability and just putting it out there, and you'll be surprised how many people, maybe not, how many people are feeling those same challenges. So it really starts again with getting that center. And how do you make sure that you're in your best position so you can operate from that position of abundance? So let's go through this and just discuss some ideas that I have that others have found to be really helpful. So first of all, I'm sure many of you, if you've been here for any period of time, you remember the flood of '08. That's the only thing that I can really reflect back on that might be kind of similar to what we're going through today. And at the time, I was head of HR for HIBU, or Yellow Book, whatever we were called back in the day. And we had about 1,000 people in our building. And we identified 42 that had lost their home or at least were displaced. They couldn't live in their home. At the same time, we had some friends that lived about 15 blocks from the river. And, as the water started to rise, we just said, why don't you just come over and, hunker in with us for just a little bit until all this craziness goes away. Well, then, everything, all hell broke loose, so to speak. And they lost their home and their business. And so we realized that they were going to be there for months, which was fine, which was absolutely fine, but it was a big shock to them and to us. And so when I went into the office that Monday morning, after we all had a chance to kind of let this sink in, how big of a disaster this was, we pulled the leadership team together and we were trying to figure out, what do we do to move forward? And I said, I think we need to start with, what do we want our story to be? I think a couple of people looked at me like I maybe drank too much that weekend. But really, once you figure out what do you want your story to be, all of the other decisions become so much easier. So I said, at 6 months or 12 months, when you're talking with your friends or family, or your employees, our employees are talking with their friends and family, our clients are talking to others, what do we want them to say about us? And there's no judgment here. Everybody might have a different story. But for us, the story was, we rallied around those people who lost their homes, and we rallied around those businesses that were really suffering. And after about that half-hour discussion to come up with those top two things, all of the other decisions were much easier to make. They weren't easy, but they were easier to make. And people who weren't part of the leadership team they were able to use that guidance in making decisions as well. So as long as that was rooted in their logic of what they were going to do, there was a lot more grace for that decision that they made. So this is a good exercise that if you can get your team or maybe your department together, or if you're having some Zoom meetings with your people, even your family, now that we've kind of settled into this and we realize it's probably going to last a little longer than what we thought, what do we want our story to be? What do we want it to be? Maybe it was to clean your house. Maybe it was to finish that project. Maybe it was just get to know each other better. But that's something that once you have that defined, all the rest of the decisions become a little bit easier. So that's the first thing. We also need to start with you. There's no way that you can help others if you're not getting centered yourself. And so, the old put on your oxygen mask first is so true. It's so true. And I have found, and many others have said this as well, the best time to do that is very first thing in the morning, before your spouse gets up, before your kids get up, before you have to start getting on that computer. What can you do to put on your oxygen mask first? For me, it's getting my dog and going for a walk. There is nothing that clears my head more for the day than to listen to Z102.9 in the morning. They are just the best. All the news that I need to know is in that little, 1 minute segment at the top of every hour and every 30 minutes. That's what I need to know. But then also just the stories and the things they're talking about, but just to be in the open air. Some people, it's meditation. And if you've never meditated before, this is a really good time to start. And start with 1 or 2 minutes. And don't beat yourself up if your head starts to wander, your mind starts to wander. Give yourself credit that you brought yourself back. There really is a lot to be said for just clearing your mind by just sitting and being and feeling the chair that you're sitting in, paying attention to your breath and to the air. But really, it all has to start with you. The second thing in getting that starting with you is, and I usually have all kinds of rubber bands. Oh, here's one. In my book, you'll see there's a rubber band on the front, and there's a purpose to this. So think of your life and your job like a rubber band. So if you lay that rubber band just right there, if you have one, grab it. They seem to be everywhere, right? So if you leave that rubber band laying there for a long period of time and it never gets stretched and never gets used, over time, that rubber band gets brittle. And by the time you try to use it, it breaks. Now, if you take that rubber band and you stretch it as far as you can, for as long as you can, stretch it farther, what's going to happen? Yeah, you're all starting to lean back a little bit. Because over time, if you stretch that for too long and too hard, it's going to snap. So think of your life and your job and your relationships and all of that like this rubber band. The goal is to be this happy little rubber band where you stretch yourself and you come back to center to relax, and then you stretch yourself again. But don't stay here too long, and don't stay here too long, because either here you're going to get brittle and not very useful and just start to feel pretty depressed, and here you're stretched and stretched and stretched, and at some point you're going to snap, and not only will you get hurt, but the people around you. So one of the things I talk a lot, the whole purpose of this book is understanding how you're authentically wired, so you know where your sweet spot is, so you can stretch and you can come back to center. So that's the story of the rubber band. You will never look at a rubber band the same again. That's my goal. The next thing is the old Smokey the Bear, right? Growing up, this was always on Saturday morning cartoons, but only you. And I want you to think about, in your role, what are the things that only you can do? Now, there are maybe a lot of things that you like to do, especially if you're in any kind of leadership role, or really any kind of role. What are the things that, like, I love to be out with people. I love to sometimes kind of geek out and get into the details of things, not too long though, because it makes me a little crazy. But there are certain things that I enjoy doing, and frankly, I'm really good at it. But as a leader in my organization back in the day, there were things only I could do. Only I could set the culture. only I could set the tone. Only I could make the decisions for my department and my team that were the really hard decisions. And so as you're thinking about your role, maybe you love to do spreadsheets, maybe you love to do sales, maybe you love to do marketing or finance or any of those things. But if you're in a leadership role, there are certain things only you can do. And this really is, there's a book by Patrick Lenciani called The Motive. It's his latest book. And it's a very good, I like all of his books, but even he says in the beginning of this book, if you haven't read any of my books, I'm glad you're starting with this one. Because this is really about what is your motive to be in those roles. And if you're in those roles, there's responsibility that comes along with it that only you can do. And you need to focus on that. So put your oxygen mask on first. Know when you're going to stretch to the point of snapping and come back to center. And know those things that only you can do. This is also a good reminder, this next slide, of focus on what you can control and what you can't. So I love this chart where I had an exercise probably about 10 years ago with my team, and there was a lot of massive change. And I called everybody into a conference room and I said, I want you to list every single thing that you worry about and put it on a sticky note, all the different things. And then I want you to put these into 3 different categories. Oh, someone's on. That's okay. That's okay. We all give grace and space, right? I want you to put them into 3 different columns. What are the things that you have absolute control over? What are the things that you think you can influence? And what are those things you just don't have control over? And we asked that quite literally, you took those things that you have no control over and crumple it up and throw it away. I think this is a great exercise even for kids. It's that visual of what are the things that you're really worried about and what are the things that you have control over. And it's really fascinating when you start talking, the things that people think they don't have control over, they might. Like I can't control that I can't go see my kids, you know, or my friends. Actually, you do have some control over that. We can do Zoom meetings, we can do FaceTime. We discovered that you can do video chat via Facebook Messenger, which is the way that we're talking to my husband's parents. And so they have Facebook, and that's been like a lifesaver. So really think about and have those conversations. What can you control? What can you influence? And what do you have no control over? And just, you need to learn how to step away from those things. So again, that's a great conversation to have with your family, with committees that you're on, even your teams, and start getting that discussion. Okay. Managing expectations about change. So in the beginning, we all tend to focus on the stuff that's above the surface, the things we can see. How do we get people to their work from home? We need to focus on the technical change and the physical change and staying away from each other and all those things that we can visualize. But under the surface, these are the things that are really going to wear on us over time. And these are the things that we can feel. The culture, the beliefs, the feelings, the stories, the family issues. I found during the flood, we learned so much more about family dynamics than we ever thought we would ever know. And helping people guide them through those issues will be a game changer, not only for each of us as individuals in our community, but also in your business. And I'm seeing businesses that are focusing only on the technical things, the financial things, and the physical things, which are absolutely important. Please don't take this the wrong way. We have to do those things. You need to be just as diligent to figure out what's going on with your employees and with the people you love emotionally. There's so much that's coming up now, and the work that Abbey Health and Foundation 2 and all of these other organizations out there are doing on mental health. People who have never had these issues before are now kind of bubbling up. We need to take care of each other. So think about, as you're having to furlough people, even if you've already done it, what are you doing to stay connected? Through that massive change that I talked about with the company I was with, we went from 250 employees up to 8,000. What I didn't mention is by the time we left, we went down to 3,000. There were so much restructuring and reorganization and layoffs and layoffs and layoffs. And our mantra in HR was, the only thing worse than having to do this is to not to do it well. And we are going to treat people with kindness and respect and with dignity. And we're going to assume the best in people. And we are going to help guide them through this, because just because they're no longer physically here doesn't mean they're not our people. And, even with the flood, taking care of those 42, we call them our 42 strong. We created such I always say there's a fine line between cult and culture, and part of McLeod and maybe part of, we had some of that cult where it was lock solid together. And even people that I've worked with 15 years ago, seeing them on the street, there's such a family togetherness there. And not everybody, but there are a lot of them that really felt that love and that support. So if you've let people go, if you've had to furlough people, please stay in touch. Please send them a note just saying, I'm thinking about you. And they may not react well, but that's on them, not on you. And I would almost guarantee that most people will appreciate that outreach, appreciate that you're thinking about them. And 60 days ago, we had more positions than people, and we were scrambling to find people. And now the tables have turned just a little bit, where we have more people than positions. But the labor shortage isn't going to go away. In about 6 months to a year, businesses are going to be where they were before, we're hoping anyway, where we have more positions than people. And the way you treat your employees and the way you treat them as human beings will make a difference if you're surviving and thriving on the other side of this. If you have all those core values and all of those mission statements written on the wall, now's the time to live it, because people will remember how they were treated during this. So talking about the things above the surface and below the surface. There's this thing called the J curve. And this was a really cool chart that I love to pull up until curve became such a word that we all began to loathe. But bear with me for a second here. Anytime there's a change, you have people just kind of tooling along, like things are going well, right? We're just going along, doing our thing, making little improvements along the way. And then you have this massive change, and your productivity is going to drop significantly. And then what happens, just like we saw with the flood, it dropped and then we came out of it stronger. That whole, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I really don't like that phrase. We said it way too much back in the day, but there's so much truth to it, right? We get our best ideas and our best innovation when we're challenged and pushed, and we have to. But let's think about why does this massive dip happen? It's because our brains are wired to be on autopilot quite often. We make 35,000 decisions in a day. And during normal times, most of those decisions are just things that we make automatically. We don't even have to think about it. We get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we take a shower, we get ready, we have our coffee, we get in the car, we drive to work, and we get to work. Do you ever get to work and go, I don't even remember that drive? Or you stop by the grocery store to pick up some milk at the same time that you're on your phone talking to your friend and you're paying for it, and you walk out and you go, wow, I don't even remember the clerk behind the counter, because you got into such autopilot, you can multitask on all these things. I liken it to like an Etch-a-Sketch. Remember back, any of you old enough to remember the Etch-a-Sketch? You turn the little dials and you have these little paths, and maybe you'd go over it over and over and over again to see if you could do it. Someone took our Etch-a-Sketch and just shook it. And now we're trying to figure out life all over again. We're trying to work from home. Every decision takes every cell in our brain, and all these neural pathways that were entrenched because we were on autopilot is all shook up. And so now we need to come up with new pathways. How do I set up my computer? How do I get my own space? Oh my gosh, now I need to teach my kids. How do you do this new math? I don't get it anymore. We're going to go to the grocery store. Oh, we can only go once this week and only one person can go. Let's make sure we're listing everything out. And do we have our masks? And do we have our gloves? And do we have our hands? And I mean, that takes a lot of brain cells. And so just think how mentally exhausted you are when you have to use all those brain cells during a day. That's why we need to come up with new thoughts and skills and carve out new pathways. We need to have repetition and practice. Find a few new habits, just a few that you can do every day, and you can get those things on autopilot. And then just add a few more. And this is the same way for your kids and your pets. We have totally rocked their world. They love structure. Kids love structure. That's how they feel safe. And there's no structure, or all the structure they knew is gone. The dogs, the pets, all the structure they knew is gone. And so everybody's like trying to walk around and figure this out. And you're all just mentally exhausted at the end of the day. And this is why there's science to this. So find a few things that can add structure, that make you feel secure, that make you feel safe. And as repetition and practice, you're going to strengthen these pathways, and the old pathways are going to get used less and they're weakened. Now here's the headline. All of your employees, if you have employees that are working from home, they're going to come up with these new pathways. And when it's time to come back to work, guess what? You're shaking up their Etch-a-Sketch again. So we're going to see this J curve every time that we have these big changes, and it's going to go down. And you're thinking, okay, we're going to go back to work and everything's going to be back in place. It's like, no, 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 no. Remember, they have to new pathways in their Etch-a-Sketch, along with their kids, along with their families, everyone else. So what we're going to try to do here is, how do we minimize this big delta? How do we minimize this big drop in productivity? And not just from a work perspective, but just in getting through the day perspective, right? This is where a lot of the concepts that I talk about in the book come to light. So throughout our lives, we're asked to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? So I want you to think back to the earliest time that you can remember. What was that thing you wanted to be? And I need to figure out chat, because I want you to put this in the chat. And then can someone let me know what are some of the thoughts that are coming up here? What's the earliest memory you have? I remember wanting to be a receptionist. I just thought that sounded like so much fun. So Michelle or someone?
Yes. Okay, I have a teacher, a youth line vet, a chef, a nurse, an artist, social worker, teacher, professional singer.
Yes. Nice. And a lot of time, thank you for sharing that. It's kind of fun to think back of all the things that you wanted to be. When I first went to college, I wanted to be first I started as I wanted to be a fashion designer. And then I had my home ec class where, I am not kidding, I made a blouse and made two left sleeves 3 times. Right? 3 times. By the time I ripped it out and had to put it back together, my right sleeve was actually like this short. I was like, so I kind of put that dream aside just a little bit. But I wanted to be an accountant because I like logical things. Anyway, most of the time we think about what do we want to be based on our technical ability. What is the thing, the technical thing we like to do? And that's really important. So we need to consider that. But what's just as important is, how do I have to be? What is the core of who I am, which is my motivation, which is my drive, which gets me fired up and excited? And so we're gonna dig into just a few of the chapters in the book, so I can give you that insight of what do you mean by how do I have to be? Because when you can combine the what and the how, that's when you have joy. And not just at work, but at home and in your relationships as well. So one of the tools that I use in my consulting practice is called an MPO personality assessment. And this gets to the core of how someone's authentically wired. And it helps to identify not can they do the job, but do they have the drive to do that job? Do they have the drive every morning to say, that's what I love to do? Someone told me once that, a salesperson will do anything they can to not have to leave the office. And I went, well, you have the wrong salesperson. Because my husband is a salesperson, and if he has to sit in the office, it doesn't end well. So who has that drive for that role, whether it's sales or being a receptionist or being a teacher, whatever that is? And this tool can get to the core of how you're authentically wired. But even if you don't have this tool, there are things that you can do to have to identify what is your drive. And I like to think of it as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So what is our need, which drives our behavior, which is our motivation? And boy, is this true for today, in today's world, not just from a work perspective and personality, but also from a survival perspective. I mean, we have people who need their basic needs right now: food, water, warmth, rest. Those are their needs. You can see it in their behavior, in their motivation. Like, I have to go to the grocery store. There's this anxiety of, I have to go get some food. I have to have money to make sure I'm paying. These are the things that are driving us. And so I want you to think about this as we're going through these personality traits. It is a real need. It is a real drive. And it is what is our motivator. So when people act a certain way, they're trying to get their need and their drive met. So again, just a little flashback onto the assessment tool, but let's dive into a few of these. And I want you to think about these and write these down. In my chapter 5, it's a whole section of how do you think? And in today's world, we're all about, we all need to be innovative and we all need to be innovative thinkers. And the reality is there are some people who are all about the proven ways of doing things. You will hear them say those words. What are the proven ways of doing things? What is the precedence? How have we done that? And some even say, well, that's the way we've always done it. And there's a lot of, I think, shaming going on in this world when we say that. And there shouldn't be, because otherwise we have people reinventing the wheel all the time. And there are some things that we really should go with the proven ways of doing things. My medical doctor, I don't want him trying like new things every time I go in for something. Like if I have a heart condition, can we just go with those proven ways of doing things versus like some new thing that you just thought of on your walk this morning with your dog? So for these folks, the answers are in the box. Just look in the box. They're all there. And then you have people who are on the other side of the spectrum. Their brain is like a Cuisinart blender. It is going, churning out new things all the time. They're constantly, I'm a 9 in this out of 10. Like it can be exhausting. It's the constant, we could do this and we could do this. And oh my gosh, I have this great idea. And my daughter once said to me, Mom, are you ever satisfied? And I went, no, I think, oh. In that context, I don't know that that was really a compliment. But it's those two sides that can cause some real conflict when you have people who are dealing with stressful situations. And so in today's world and what we're going through right now, the people who are looking for these proven methods, the proven ways of doing things, how have we done things in the past, are probably struggling a little bit more than the people who are like, well, we could do this. And I could turn this thing into a new thing that helps me help the workers on the front line. They're coming up with these new and different ideas. So there's no judgment, there's no shaming, there's a value in both sides of this. Just understanding where you are and maybe where somebody else is can help guide yourself and others through all of this change. And there are a whole bunch of people in the middle. So you may be on one side or the other, given the situation. The real challenge becomes if you're way on the left or way on the right, and it's a blessing and a curse. It works really well in some respects, and it can work really against you in others. So this is about how you think. The next trait we're going to look at is chapter 6, and this is the need to win. I talk about my kids and my family in the book quite a bit. I have a lot of need to winners in my family. It's all about just that goal orientation. But let's first talk about the people who are more agreeable, the people who need harmony in their life. They need people to cooperate. They want to contribute to the team goal, and they need conflict-free opportunities to offer input. Did you ever have someone on your team where you ask them, okay, does anybody have any questions? Is there anything I'm not thinking about? And no one says anything. And then later you heard that they didn't agree with you. You're like, what the heck? Why didn't they say something during the call or during our meeting? Well, they need to have conflict-free opportunities to offer that input. They want harmony. And if they bring something up and they're met with questioning, and what do you mean by that? You may just think you're asking, what do you mean by that? They may be taking it as, oh, I'm never opening my mouth again. So just know that there are people who need that. They need that harmony. I can't stress that word enough. They need that harmony. They don't like conflict. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the assertive people, the people who are all about winning, and they want independence. Telling them that they have to stay home, they cannot leave, here are the rules, is so incredibly hard because they are used to making the rules, breaking the rules, and doing what it takes to win. They're self-starters. They want autonomy. They want challenge. They want goals. They want control. And so they could be struggling in this situation for a different reason. Your agreeable ones are your rule followers. These are the rules. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And they're not paying attention to the rules. And the assertive ones may be struggling a little bit more about, don't tell me what to do. So understanding yourself and understanding others, that's how you're going to guide yourself through this and guide others through it. Start with yourself. I always look at the pioneers who said, let's go west. Those were the assertive. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the risk is. Let's just go and figure it out as we go. And then you have other people saying, yeah, but who's bringing the food? Like, do we have enough clothes? Where are the kids? Did you know you left Johnny in the house while you were taking off? Can you just slow down for a minute? We need everybody on this journey together and to understand and respect the value that the other one brings. The next one we're going to look at is chapter 7, is what fuels you. And this is really your energy source. And we talk about introversion and extroversion just sometimes in a funny way. But I want you to think of it as, where do you get your energy? The introverts get their energy in their brain. They're internal. All that external craziness is exhausting. Internal stimulus, they think to talk. Did you ever ask somebody a question and they just give you the answer? You're like, how'd you come up with that? What were you thinking? Well, I was thinking. Because extroverts talk to think. We'll get into that in a second. They want data, they want focus, they want research. You'll hear them say, I need to do my research on this. They are prove it people. They're reserved, they can be blunt. I had someone say once, boy, that leader doesn't trust anyone. And I'm like, you're right. That is a factual statement. In fact, the more you say, trust me, the more they don't trust you. They need evidence every day that they can trust you. And it's through actions and through data and through evidence that they trust. So it's not just, do they want to be alone? It's also about, where do they get their energy? And if you're in a room of people and all of a sudden that person goes over to the corner and they're on their phone, think of them as literally, I'm plugging in to charge up to come back to all of that craziness going on. That's why some people love team building activities, and some people would rather have their, I'm trying to think of a good analogy in today's world, and I'm just the worst thing that could ever happen. So let's just put it that way. So, all right, the next side is the extrovert side. So where do you get your energy again? Extrovert is all about external. It's about movement. It's not just about people. It's about seeing movement. I am a 10 in extroversion. Surprise, surprise. I talk to think. My best ideas come when I say the words out loud. I talk to my plant and my dog a lot when I'm home alone. I have a people focused. I trust. I don't need a ton of data and research. 4.5 stars is good enough for me. I appreciate the analytics. Don't get me wrong. I just don't want to dig into them. And when you ask me a question, there's a really good chance you're going to hear every thought process I have that got me to that answer. So the extroverts are really struggling right now because they don't have that interaction. They're scheduling more of the Zoom meetings. They need to have those face-to-face meetings, even if it's over a computer. And the thing that's out there that I want to make sure we kind of break is that introverts still need people. I mean, solitary confinement is the ultimate punishment in every single culture that's out there. Everyone. If you're the worst of worst of society, you're thrown into a cell all by yourself. Introverts just tend to have a fewer close friends with deep relationships. So we still need each other. It's just how many people and how loud does it get in the room? So understanding yourself and the people that you're quarantined with or sheltered with or with every day, give them grace and space. If they need quiet, leave them alone a little bit, give them their time. And kids too, you're going to see this in kids. I have an adorable video of my granddaughter crawling into a box. She's like, leave me alone. Just leave me, like, I just need quiet. And I just love that because she recognizes I need to be alone for a little bit. No judgment, just the way it is. Okay, the next one. How do you react to situations? This is chapter 8. There are some people who are very logical and practical. When the unforeseen comes up, they're going to take a very logical approach to this. You will never see them sweat. They have high confidence, and this is how they operate. And someone tells a joke, they may say, that is hilarious. They're dying inside, but you'll just not see that emotion on the outside. Doesn't mean they're not compassionate. It just means they don't have an emotional reaction to things. Empathy is difficult because they go straight to fixing it, right? There's a logical way to work through anything. On the other side of this, you have people who are more emotional. They have a more emotional reaction to things. They laugh easier, they cry easier. They can feel the emotions in the room. And for those of you who are way logical, you probably don't understand this, and I struggle with this a little bit myself. It's that when you're in a room, the person who has that higher emotional spontaneity, can literally feel the emotion in the room and wears it like a weighted blanket. So if I look at someone and they say, I'm fine, I tend to believe them. Where someone who has that more emotional spontaneity can feel if that person isn't really sharing their emotions. It's fascinating and it's important. And if you are a more logical person and you live with someone who has a more emotional spontaneity to them, please listen to them. They can tell when people are hurting. And as we're working through all of this together, we need to understand when people are hurting and help them and listen. More than help, listen. Guide them to the resources that can help them work through that emotion. Because logically fixing it is rarely the right answer in the heat of the moment. So, okay. Next we have chapter 9, and this is, I think, our last one. The tortoise, are you the tortoise or the hare? So you remember all the fable of, are you the tortoise that steady pace runs the race, right? Like, I'm going to stay focused on this thing and I'm going to keep going. Or are you the hare going, woo, 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 I'm all over. I got all this energy and I'm going to multitask. Well, if you're the hare, you have this high sense of urgency, you start at the end, let's just get to there. You're very impatient, you like a lot of variety. And while no brain can multitask, Yours switches gears so fast, it looks like you can. You can go from reading an email to answering a question to coming back to this, and oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. I'm going to start that and come back to this. And you can just switch gears very quickly. And this marathon that we're in is frustrating because you just want to get through it. We just have to get, let's just go. You love the pressure, you love the intensity, you love the deadlines, right? Whereas on the other side, you have people who are more methodical. They're the more tortoise. They're the more, this is a marathon, and we have to take one step at a time. Think of it, the difference between a fast-paced ER doctor who's going from one thing to the next, to the anesthesiologist who's immersing themselves in one patient at a time, being very focused, not getting diverted. Now, in today's world, there's this high value put on, let's go, let's go, let's go. We can multitask, we can do all of this. But I'm telling you what, if I ever have to have a surgery that lasts more than, I say, 5 or 6 hours, I want my surgeon and my anesthesiologist and everybody else in that room to have the tortoise mentality. I am sticking with this until it is done. So think of the people in your family. Do you have people who are go, go, go? Or you have others who say, I'm finishing this, and then I'm going to give you my full attention. And it's really cute in the beginning of a relationship when you have people who are opposite because they balance each other out, and then stress comes up and you just want to take their Etch-a-Sketch and shake it, right? So guiding yourself and others is all about understanding, what are my triggers? What gets me fired up? When am I my happy little rubber band? And when am I about to snap? And regulating yourself before you try to tell other people what to do. That's the ticket. So again, going back to the assessment tool that I use, you don't have to figure this out. You take a 10, 15-minute assessment and you get this chart, and now we know. Now we know what roles are better suited for others. So here are my 2 final thoughts on this. As we're working through this together and we're all probably either stretched or we're all laying here like this, there isn't just a whole ton of a happy medium right now because we're all trying to figure this out. I challenge you and ask you to think about, how do we get curious before we get furious? If someone is doing something that is just making you crazy, instead of posting some comment on Facebook or sending a tweet, can we take time to ask the question and get curious? Help me understand where you're coming from on that. I really want to understand your thought process on that. And then maybe, just maybe, we can agree to disagree without getting really angry. Wouldn't that be a great thing that would come out of this? Oh, I was talking to somebody else the other day about this. If we could get out of this, that we all have a better understanding of each other and we're all truly in this together, truly respectful of other people's opinions and thoughts and feelings, that would be amazing. So how do you get curious before furious? How do you say, what else can this mean? How might this be a good thing in disguise? How could that other person's thought, maybe there's some validity to it? Instead of I'm working my way up to defend my position, truly look at it and say, I'm going to keep calm and assume positive intent. I'm going to assume that person is doing something because they think it's the right thing to do. When people are acting out and acting what we think is not in a great manner, it's usually because they're trying to get a need met. They have a need that is their drive, that is their motivation. And if we can figure out what is that need that they need to get met, I bet we could all get along a little bit better. Think of a baby. When a baby cries, you don't just say, be quiet, baby, right? You try to figure out, and by the time they're about 6 or 8 months, you start to figure out that cry means they're hungry. That cry means they want me to put them down or pick them up. And I just wonder if we thought about when people are acting in a certain way if we could assume that there's a need that's not getting met and how could we help them meet that? If we could all bring the blood pressure down just a little bit more. And if we can assume positive intent and not they're trying to make me angry, a person's trying to make me crazy. I think that to me, this is the core of how you guide yourself and you guide others through any time, but especially through a challenging time. So I want to go back to the beginning. What do you want your story to be? What do you want your family to say? I mean, we are living history right now. This will be in the history books, and people are going to say, when we're old, I was going to say in gray, but I think a lot more of us are turning gray. When can we open up the hair salons? Can we come up with like protective masks? Anyway, but when we're old and even our kids are old and people say, Grandma, Grandpa, tell us about the time when that pandemic went through and your world changed. Tell us about that. What do you want your kids to say? You want your kids to say, you know what? I got an A on every homework assignment that came through. Maybe. Or do you want your kids to say, you know what? I learned so much about my family and I learned so much about nature. It was amazing. I learned how to cook. I learned how to play family games. There's no judgment here. Everybody has to come up with their own thing, but be purposeful and diligent in that and not just we're going to wing it and fly through this over the next however many weeks or months. What do you want that story to be? And one of the things after I wrote this that I realized my grandkids and my great grandkids will now understand me a little bit better because so many of my personal stories are in here. And that was a pretty cool byproduct of it. So that's it. That's all I have. My mission, my purpose, my goal with my consulting business is guiding individuals, teams, and organizations to be their best through coaching and assessment tools. And if we can all get to the core of how we're authentically wired and really understand that, and then understand how others are authentically wired, if I can figure out what makes me tick and what makes you tick, then we can tick together. And just seeing those aha moments when people can really start to work together better, that's my job joy. So I'm going to stop sharing. And now I can see all the chats again. So tell me, what are one or two things that were your aha moments out of this?
I just loved I love the beginning and then how you just wrapped it up. We purchased a journal. We maybe haven't fully written in it yet, but when you talk about this is going to be a history lesson. This is going to be something that my kids talk about to their kids, to their grandkids. And so we do want to kind of write it all out, not only our feelings, but what did we accomplish? What were we doing? We were laughing because somebody in our house, the only guy in our house, purchased an Xbox for the children, thinking, of course, he needed entertainment. And we were thinking, gosh, how will our kids explain to their kids even what was an Xbox someday, you know?
Right.
So just kind of making note of that. But I appreciate your part of what do you want the story to be? And as we kind of balance it all out, what was the lesson learned or what was the greater picture? So
Right.
I think that hearing you say it hit home. So thank you.
Good. And if anyone wants to just put in the chat what they want, or they want to share it verbally, that's great too. I know some people will be dropping off here pretty soon. So here's what I'd like to have you do. If you could send me an email at Patti@pattiseda.com. So it's PATTI@PATTISEDA.com. And let me know two things that you got out of this. I will take all of those emails when they come through, and I'll offer a free coaching session. It's a 2-hour coaching session. It includes an assessment, and I'll offer one of those. In fact, I'll offer two. There are quite a few people on here. So we'll do 2 of those. So if you could send those to me by noon today, what are 2 things that you got out of today's session? I'd really appreciate that. And if anybody else wants to mark those down as well, I'm going to start each day with things that only I can do right. You know, there are other people in the house that can unload the dishwasher. You maybe do it better than anybody else, but it's going to be okay. It will be okay. Towels may not get folded the same way you do, but it's going to be okay. These are life lessons that your kids can learn, right? Learn not to stretch myself. Yeah, stretching a little bit is good. Stretching all day, every day, not good, right? The way in which you react in situations is a perfect description between my husband and I. He's so logical. Yeah, and I've tried hard not to let my emotions run wild. You know what? Here's the thing with that. If you have that emotional reaction, you need to express that. You need to get that out. And if your husband's not the right one to talk to about it, then find someone else. Because we know through science that if you stuff those feelings, if you stuff that emotion, it's going to come popping out in some other place, somewhere down the line, and no one's going to know where that came from. Emotions buried alive never die. My good friend Lindsay Leahy gave me that tip. I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, and it is stuck. If you stuff those feelings and you stuff that stress and you don't deal with it, even though you think you're logically dealing with it, it is going to pop out somewhere later. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a really important piece here. Could you say my email again? Sure. It's Patti, P-A-T-T-I, at pattiseda.com. It's pronounced Sheda, but for spelling purposes, we're going to say Seda. So PATTISEDA.com, keeping it simple. Brand new to HR, just recently got a degree, and it's an amazing opportunity came through where I could start my HR degree, and boom, pandemic. Oh, bless all the business owners and HR professionals. Give them a hand. Oh, all the changes that are coming through. Hopefully, if you're part of HR, you're part of the Eastern Iowa HR Association. If you're not, Google EIHRA, Eastern Iowa HR Association. It's a network, and it's an awesome network. They are sharing ideas and helping each other out. So make sure you take care of that. I think I need to be the tortoise and not the hare. Keep in mind, you are who you are. So if you're a hare and you're required to be a tortoise every once in a while, do that in small chunks and then go back to being a hare again, because you can't teach a duck to run, right? I wish I had a duck analogy that I could use in my book, but if a duck is a really great swimmer and then you hire him a coach to be a really great runner, guess what? You're just screwing up their little web feet. So let the duck be a swimmer, embrace that duck being a great swimmer, give them a high five or a high paddle or waddle or whatever, but they are a duck first. And they might be okay runner, but they're never going to be an amazing runner. Okay, great. Well, we are at 9:32. Thank you so much for your time. Make sure to send me an email. Take care of you. Take care of others.